Like, what do you do about all the criminals? Take them all and send them to El Salvador.
Yeah. Joe Rogan says it best, everyone. I know we're not all the largest Rogan fans in the room, but I promise you, you're going to want to hear his criticism of the Trump administration. In all actuality, I think he provides crucial criticism towards Trump's actions as of late, which is important now more than ever coming from a major right-wing media figure. Now, how exactly did we get to Rogan appearing at Congress? Let's roll the tape.
Hold on. Go ahead.
Over the weekend, President Trump said that he would be willing to have U.S. citizens deported to El Salvador with the cooperation of President Bukele. How would that work legally, and how many people would potentially be available for that operation?
So the president has discussed this idea quite a few times publicly. He's also discussed it privately. You're referring to the president's idea for American citizens to potentially be deported. These would be heinous, violent criminals who have broken our nation's laws repeatedly, and these are violent repeat offenders in American streets. The president has said if it's legal, right, if there is a legal pathway to do that, he's not sure. We are not sure if there is. It's an idea that he has simply floated and has discussed very publicly as in the effort of transparency. Reagan.
Welcome to Eat the Narrative, the place where mainstream myths get shredded and the truth hits harder than a press release ever could. There are a lot of deeply unsettling elements in Trump's latest deportation proposal, but these particular clips have really shaken things up. Enough to spark backlash not only from Democrats and independents, but also from Republicans and even right-wing media figures. Of all of the questionable, arguably criminal moves from the Trump administration, this plan to unlawfully deport U.S. citizens stands out as one of the most alarming to me. And it's not just me. This has triggered more conservative pushback than nearly anything else that he's done. That includes Joe Rogan, who, surprisingly, has become more critical of Trump than we're used to seeing, which honestly caught me off guard considering how much he's typically defended MAGA talking points. But on this topic, Rogan has drawn a firm line, and it escalated further when his remarks were echoed during a congressional hearing. We're going to break all of that down, all starting with Congressman Robert Garcia, who didn't hold back in condemning Trump.
Now, we know that Donald Trump has already sent innocent people to El Salvador with absolutely no due process. The Supreme Court, in a 9-0 decision, has ordered the return of an individual who has had no due process. We also know that many of the folks that have been deported have no criminal records, have not faced or had access to judges or even been able to call their families. He has sent them instead to a brutal foreign prison with no oversight that could happen to anyone. And we also know now that U.S. citizens are being deported with no due process. Now, we heard earlier from my colleague, Representative Magaziner, and others about Andrea Hernandez. Mr. Romero was a gay designer and hairdresser who was falsely accused of gang affiliations because of simple tattoos that he had.
Hey, you there. If you're enjoying this content, please consider subscribing as it really helps this channel out. These videos take a lot of effort, and I love to make them, and your guys' support means the world to me, so thank you. Let's get back to the video.
He has no criminal record, is from a community that celebrates the King's Festival, which is why he had a crown tattoo, and now he's in danger. And even though he passed a credible fear interview, he's being held in horrific conditions. And let's remember, he actually went to his appointment he was given by our own government, showed up to the appointment, and then was deported with no due process. So he's doing what we've asked him to do, and then being sent to an El Salvador prison, and no one's heard from him now for over a few weeks. We know that Donald Trump has no credible evidence that he was involved in any sort of gang activity, and instead is violating his rights of due process, of which every person in this country has. Now, a lot of us, myself included, weren't born into the protections that all citizens have. I was an immigrant. I came here as a young child. I've had to go through paperwork. I've had to stand in long lines. I've learned English, and I've gone through many of the things that other migrants in this country go through. I've lived a large part of my life not a U.S. citizen. And so for me and for many others, this is also very personal. The Constitution should be protecting all of us and is the backbone of the rule of law. This amendment is for due process, for what I believe are true American values, and I urge everyone to support it, and I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Let's be clear. The idea that a president can strip citizenship or deport American citizens is absurd on its face. It's even more outrageous coming from a man who he himself has faced criminal charges. For someone like Trump to claim he's cracking down on crime while floating blatantly unconstitutional ideas is peak hypocrisy, the kind that only makes sense in the MAGA echo chamber. What we're really seeing is Trump using fear as a political weapon. He knows he's losing popularity, and this kind of authoritarian power play is his way of trying to reassert dominance. It specifically appeals to an unfortunately large percentage of his supporter base, even though he's essentially saying he wants citizens to feel threatened. That's the message behind his plan. But it's also why you're seeing people across the spectrum speaking out. It's what led to this viral moment where Joe Rogan's words were used during a congressional session to tear this plan apart.
The overcorrection is like round them all up, ship them to jail. Like that's like some things that you say when you're not thinking things through. Like, what do you do about all the criminals? Take them all and send them to El Salvador.
Yeah.
What about due process? No, that. But here's the problem with that. What if you are an enemy of, let's not say any current president. Let's pretend we got a new president, totally new guy in 2028. And this is a common practice now of just rounding up gang members with no due process and shipping them to El Salvador. You're a gang member. No, I'm not. Prove it. What? I got to go to court. No, no due process.
That's dangerous, Joe.
That's dangerous. That's dangerous. That's dangerous. We got to be careful that we don't become monsters while we're fighting monsters. And I think due process exists for a reason, and the reason is it is horrific for someone to be accused of something they didn't do, be imprisoned for crimes they didn't commit, and then live in a cell, live in a cage with a bunch of
people who did commit.
Here it is, Benjamin Franklin. It's better 100 guilty persons should escape than one innocent person should suffer. That is wisdom that has survived hundreds of years. It's incredibly accurate, and it is the foundation of freedom. Like, we have to make sure that these people are actually guilty, otherwise we become monsters. You can't, like, what is that? When you fight monsters, be careful that you don't become one.
Become one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's very important. It's very important. You know, you can't do that. You know, it's one of those things where to support one side of this, you have to deny some, like, basic human values. Either way. Like, to support just rounding people up and just assuming they're all gang members. I'm not saying they're doing that, but this is the worst case scenario, right?
Yeah.
They get a bunch of people in a room, they rope them all in, and one guy's just someone's cousin picking someone up to give him a ride home. That's possible.
And now you're back on the one innocent person now you're right back.
And what if that dude is not doing anything wrong and he's got some stupid tattoos and they decide that this guy's a gang member and now you're in a prison in El Salvador and you're not even from El Salvador.
This was a genius move by Congressman Magaziner to bring Rogan's comments into the hearing, to show his Republican colleagues that this issue isn't just controversial, it's politically toxic. There's been a lot of hesitation within the Democratic Party about which battles are worth fighting publicly, but this is a clear opportunity. Yes, it's a political win, but more importantly, it's a moral one. We're talking about blatant human rights violations. This is what creeping authoritarianism looks like. A president proposing a police state tactic to intimidate his own people, disguised under a positive political agenda that supposedly helps everyone, even though for people like us, it's so easy to see how this is all just a sham. No legal justification, no process, just raw power and fear. If someone like Joe Rogan, someone MAGA supporters usually rally behind, is calling it out, that tells you everything. When you're gaining ground in conservative spaces, it's not just okay to talk about it, it's essential. I'm going to let the rest of the Magaziner clip play. I think he has a lot of important information to say here. So let me know what you guys think about it in the comments.
Well, look, I don't agree with Joe Rogan on everything, but I think that's very well said. Due process exists for a reason, so that mistakes don't get made and innocent people don't accidentally get shipped to prison, particularly prison in a foreign country. And let's be clear, this administration is capable of making mistakes. They accidentally fired all the people who guard the nuclear stockpile and then had to rehire them. They put war plans in an unsecured signal chat and invited a reporter in by accident. They put up insane tariffs and then the market tanked and they rolled a bunch of them back. The list goes on and on. They said they were going to cancel the Social Security hotline and then realized that was a mistake and walked that back. This administration is capable of making mistakes, just like anyone's capable of making mistakes. The whole reason we have due process, the whole reason we have courts, is so that people don't get sent to jail on a mistake. That is why Mr. Garcia's amendment is so important. Yes, let's deport criminals, but let's have due process to make sure that the people we're deporting actually are criminals and not innocent people who are being shipped to foreign prisons by accident. I yield back.
That's a wrap from Eat the Narrative, where truth isn't polished, it's weaponized. If you guys enjoyed this content, please drop a like, leave a comment, consider subscribing, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.